Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural Whiskey Bugger Streamside chat. Today, I've got a good buddy of mine, Ty Gallenbeck from Western Colorado. He's a magician out of Telluride, but he's also an avid fisherman. Ty and I met a few years back through a podcast I do called The Podcast, a podcast about whiskey. But Ty and I developed a friendship, and I got invited on what is the most amazing group of guys going fishing every October in Western Colorado. And that's the very trip that Ty and I are going to be talking about today. So Ty, you've been going to this area for over 15 years. What keeps taking you back to that area?
It started as just like opportunistic. My dad was there, and so we were able to go up and stay for free. And some legendary trips and some great friends have made it something that it is the first thing I put on my calendar every year. And so it's become this thing. I have turned down weddings. I have turned down major gigs because this trip is just that important.
So I'll show some photos of this area, but it is arguably one of the prettiest places I've ever been in my life. When you're at the cabin, you're nestled kind of in a little valley where the tailwater runs right in front of it, right out of the dam. But then up on top is just this gorgeous reservoir that has some monster fish in it. And I got the opportunity to go 2 years ago and had the time of my life. Wasn't able to go last year, but was able to go back this year. And it is genuinely one of the greatest groups of guys I think I've ever hung out with. Everyone is there just to have a good time. Everyone respects each other, except for sometimes during the poker game late at night. But we have a great time, and it's just a unique thing that I don't think enough people have in their life, where you can get away, unplug, connect with people, and just enjoy the outdoors and fishing. And I think, to me, that's what makes it so unique and keeps making me want to go back. But, what is that? Did it start in any way like that, where you're thinking, oh, this is, this philosophical grand thing, or was it just, I want to go fishing and I'm going with some good guys?
The escape part of it was definitely part of the appeal early on. Just that there's no cell service, there's no Wi-Fi. And so you have this like 4 to 5 day window where you really get to disconnect. So that was definitely started the appeal, but I don't think any of us at younger ages realized how much we needed that escape. And so now later on in life, with people from different walks of life, but all of us kind of in that high demand work, life, family balance, you realize how important getting away and just kind of checking out for a few days really benefits you for an entire year.
So we'll talk about this year a little bit, but before we do, you've had many of them. Do any specific years stick out as something different than any of the others?
There's definitely highlights from various years. The first year we discovered the lake trout spawn was pretty iconic. That was definitely the launching point that made this like bigger than life fishing trip. There was the year we all thought we were going to die because it started snowing on us in the middle of the night, and we had a treacherous hike ahead of us. So we've had that. This year will be different because my dad retired this year. And so there was some looming darkness that this may be the last time we ever got to stay at the cabin. And so going into this year, I was definitely holding it as like, this could be the last one. So it felt different this year going in.
And you mentioned the cabin. I think what I love about this trip too is there's so much lore baked into it since it's been going so long. Whether it be the red boat, blue boat rivalry, whether it be the drone that was met its watery grave, whether it be some of those stories, like you said, about the treacherous snowstorm that came up on you out of nowhere in the middle of the night. But even the cabin itself, which I think is such a cool juxtaposition of how gorgeous the valley is, because it's a pretty rustic cabin. And sometimes you have running water, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have running water that's not potable. Sometimes it's a little bit colder than usual, and that wood-fired stove runs out in the middle of the night. But it's not like this is some luxury getaway to this really, like, this lodge. But it's the cabin, I think, it's such a character in the trip itself that, like you said, when there's the potential that it was looking like maybe it's not the next year, the trip won't end, but the cabin may, and it almost felt like a funeral of sorts, with that character maybe coming to a close.
Absolutely. Like this. So just to give a little context for everyone, there's a dam manager house that is a fairly updated cabin, nice spot. That's where my dad lives. The bunkhouse that is owned by the water users has been there. I remember going as a middle schooler in Boy Scouts, and we got to stay at this place. And it has not changed in 30 years. And that has been very intentional, regardless of my opinion on that. But
Sure.
People have said, we want to keep it rustic. We want to keep, there's no heat, there's no drywall, there's all these things. There's 1960 quilts hanging from the wall. Like, there's all this stuff that people just associate with that place. And it definitely adds to the feeling of, you're going to see mice running across the floor. Like, you may have a mouse run across your head while you're sleeping. Like, that has happened.
Yeah.
But it is part of the escape and the experience that you're not in a 4-star lodge or anything like that. You're camping without a tent, but it's kind of
sometimes a tent may provide more shelter. Who's to say, right? I mean,
yeah, it's like some people may need to get away from the snoring.
Yeah.
So they set up a tent.
That did happen. Yes. But another tradition, and I have a cold right now, but I'm going to have a little drink with you. But this is one of the coolest traditions, and this is the damn whiskey. And so this is from 2022, and every year someone contributes a bottle, and you fill up a small keg, oak barrel keg, and let that marinate and age for a year out there at Taylor Reservoir. And so this one is the year that I went. The first time I went, I got to take some home, but I also contributed that year. Got to try a few other years at the dam this year, but then we also once again filled that back up. How did that get started? The making of the dam whiskey.
It had to have been around the time that we initially met, with the podcast and stuff. The whiskey kind of became this, hobby in my life. And so we decided to start mixing whiskey up there at the reservoir and aging our own and buying our own barrel. And I think the first year we went, everyone bought a bottle of Weller Special Reserve.
Nice.
And we put it in, I think at that point it was like a 1.5 or 3 liter barrel, like it was smaller than it is now. And we let that age for a year and came back the next year, and it was absolute trash. It was so bad. And we just learned like aging it in the dam area. So we'll go with that.
Somewhere around said dam.
There's some government regulations that we need to not
infringe upon. Yeah.
Correct. There's a lot of humidity. There's not a lot of temperature change, so you're not getting some of that stuff you get typically. And so we finally figured out new oak barrel, 100 proof or better, aged for 1 year in I think it's 5 gallon, 3 gallon, 5 liter. I don't know, something like that. Actually turns out really, really good.
Yeah.
So for the last 5 or 6 years, that's kind of been our recipe, and everyone brings their own bottle. It's about 15 bottles go into it. And it's freaking fantastic.
And it's gotta be over 100 proof just to make sure it doesn't get too watered down and muddy, and who's to say what else creeps in there. But so this is delicious. I love this. I really liked the others that I got a chance to try this year, plus the current year. And then we refilled it, or at least you refilled it again with the bottles that were brought. But there is a old.
Yeah, you actually got to try the one you contributed to.
Right, which I loved. I thought it was great, but that's mainly because I contributed to it. So it was it
made it better.
I put some Belle Meade, not the single barrel, but just the Belle Meade bourbon. Maybe it was a single barrel.
Reserve, wasn't it?
Yes, that's what it is. Yep, the Belle Meade Reserve. So I put that in there. Had to take a little Tennessee out to Colorado, and then this year I put Jack Daniel's Bonded Rye. So I'm trying to influence you guys with a little Tennessee when I go out there. But so this year there was a lot of fishing. There was a lot of drinking. Those are kind of the constants. But what were some of your highlights from Taylor this year?
So this year was funky fishing wise. Mm-hmm. We had like 75-degree temps, which average is probably closer to like 45. And our lawyer friend would say something about global warming.
Right.
Those kind of things. But,
checks out.
But we did catch personal best rainbow for the boat that I've ever seen out of the reservoir. Mm-hmm. And actually talking to some of the like the boat check guys, they're like, I've never heard of a rainbow that big being caught out of the reservoir, which was kind of cool. We caught a couple of rainbows that were 24 inches plus.
Yeah. Pete's was just a big old fat rainbow. I mean, it was long and girthy, and like when he gripped it, you could see like almost like rainbow fat rolls hanging over. Like it was just a chunker. But that day, I caught one on a fly I'd tied when we ran out of gas. And
gotta throw that part in.
Yeah, I had to. So we ran out of gas, and it's a whole story. Ty normally doesn't run out of gas, but he also normally has a trolling motor too. So a lot of things were haphazard about that day. But we I threw a Clouser minnow in and was stripping it in when we were over kind of in some shallower water, and caught a pretty decent rainbow on that. On a 7-weight fly rod, which was just a blast to do up in the reservoir. And then I caught probably the second biggest rainbow of the trip, maybe. With a spinning reel, and it was like 50 feet out, and that thing just annihilated it. At the same time, Ty runs over to see it, and it's skipping across the water. You said it looked like a marlin. And then I think to myself, this fish is way too far away and way too strong. There's no way I'm going to land it. But right after that, Pete yells, "Fish on!" And he's got a pike on that was not too shabby either. So we're doubling up right then. Meanwhile, Redboat had no fish that day, but we just had that was a very memorable moment for the weekend for me, was doubling up that big rainbow, him getting that pike, and then right after that monster pike that was over 30 inches at least. And I did a video. If you're watching this and haven't seen the video about the trip, I link it below. But Ty also does 8 Times Up Outdoors, which is the hat I've got on. Make sure you go subscribe to his channel and his Patreon, because you get cool stuff like this hat when you're a patron.
New shirts. And
the new shirt is awesome. I love that. Got home and already put new stickers on my Yeti from the weekend. But so those fishing moments were definitely top moments for me. What else sticks out to you from the trip?
Yeah, I mean, that pike and those rainbows were something that have not happened in 17 years. And so, like, to have something like that just makes this year stick out as far as personal best on 2 different species. It's not common at this point. So that was super fun. And I always get a little giddy. Like, I understand you fly fish more than you do anything else. And so I feel like you kind of sacrifice to spend time on the boat, because you're like, I could be fishing the best trout stream in the world and I'm on a pontoon boat. But watching you fly fish on the front of a pontoon boat is also just epic to me.
Yeah, like, it's definitely next level.
I will cheer you on for a 6-inch rainbow all day long, because I just think it's something special.
Yeah. Well, and I think that I'm thinking about doing a video on here saying, is it ever worth it to use spinning gear, just to see if it gets views. But that is what I do like about the trip. Yeah, when I go fishing here at home, unless I'm taking my boy and we're using his tiny Zebco, I'm fly fishing. But out there on the boat, I mean, first of all, it's not practical to be constantly fly fishing, especially when you're in 100 feet of water, 150 feet of water. It's a really deep reservoir. And so that's not practical, but I do take it with me. And when we get closer to the shore, still got to give it that shot. And this time got very fortunate on that, with that Clouser minnow. But I also got to go down the stream and do something new in Colorado. I've gone East Tennessee, do a lot of dry fly fishing on trout streams, but that's a different type of dry fly fishing out there, and was able to get a beautiful brown almost 10 minutes after I got there. Just added to the whole lore once again of it. It's like I pulled up, I'd driven a couple hours, I'd stopped off at one spot and got there, and Chris yells, "Hey, there's a hatch going off." And I just sprint. I'm just like, I gotta get into this. And I think my skill level as a dry fly caster has gotten better, because I've done some trips around East Tennessee. But being able to hook into that and just not long after I got there was just kind of a magical moment. And I think that trip in and of itself just lends itself to magical moments.
I think that's a great explanation. And I think there's always the next magical moment.
Yeah.
Like, I still desperately want to see you hook a lake trout on a fly rod. And for us, like, there's that 35, there's that 40-inch lake trout jigging or off the boat. Like we've caught them from the shore, but we've never caught the 40-inch laker off the boat yet. And I mean, that's been a 5-6 year quest at this point. And so there's always that next moment or that next thing that makes each year special.
But I think that
besides just the hanging out with people and,
right,
you know, who shows up that's new. And we had Jason Newman show up this year, which, you know, he talked a lot about how, like, he used to be a river raft guide and do this stuff all the time and hasn't done it for years. And this was kind of a coming back to some of those roots for him. Those things are special.
Yeah, and I think that with the group too, yeah, there's a lot of smack talk and rivalry between the boats, but at the end of the day, everyone just wants to have a good time, and there's no real animosity or pretension at all between the people there. And that's what just, once again, just makes it so special, is that the first year I went, being welcomed so warmly by everyone that had never met me. I'm from halfway across the country, and instantly felt at home and just had a blast. And that's definitely a rare feeling. That's a rare thing to find, where you can just instantly feel at home with a group of people that are, you know, on the younger side and older side of middle age at this point, that we're very set in our ways, and especially a group that's been doing this so long together. I think that's another unique thing about this group, is being willing to let someone new in and make sure they have the best time they can. And that's rare, but that is what this trip is.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you created that with the podcast and, you know, some of those early whiskey weekend events, like that it was this, I don't know anyone. And yet walking into the room, you feel that connection. And so those moments, weekends, getaways, leave a lasting impact on your life. And that's, you know, the same with this is we typically invite maybe 1 or 2 new people a year, because that's usually all we have room for. And then after you get invited 3 times, if you say no 3 times, it's like, well, you kind of missed the
moving on, right?
Yeah. So it does make it a special place for sure.
Well, that's that's what I've got about it. It's magical. I think everyone should try to find something like this that they can create, a community, a trip, a way to get away, and to just not care about anything except for fishing for a few days, because it is very restorative. And when you've got good people that you're going with, it makes it just that much better. So I appreciate you letting me tag along for 2 of the years, 2 out of the 3 that I've been invited. So I started to get dicey there with that middle year, but I think I'm back on track. So
you came back.
Yeah,
you came back.
But I appreciate it. I do love that y'all figured out that my travel itinerary was completely wrong by doing a layover and not going direct to Denver and then just driving. That may save me half a day going forward. So that's instead of a 14-hour day of travel, you know, we're looking at maybe 7. So that's a new thing, you know, looking at maps. That should be helpful. But Ty, thank you so much for joining me for a little bit and recapping the weekend. And everyone go check out 8 Times Up Outdoors on YouTube and Patreon, and subscribe and go get some cool swag.
Yeah, absolutely. And go watch the recap video from this weekend. We'll put together an epic recap. Chris and I were both in this mind state of like, this is it. Like, and so we didn't work much. in that recording world. And so I'm super appreciative of what you put together, because it shows the weekend very well.
Well, I did try to get enough footage that I could put something together, but didn't constantly be filming. And I think I found that balance well and put something together that pays tribute to the weekend, but also didn't make me look like a tourist just running around with a video camera. So thanks, Ty. I was glad to do it. I'll link that. I may just like make it pop up right there or something. But thanks everyone for watching. Thank you, Ty, and I'll talk to y'all on another Streamside chat.
That's the best thing.